Wow, have I got impact in the room for you today? I've got Lucy Mills in the room with us today. She's anything that is evolved around the word powerhouse. ReadySportGlobal.com is doing some really innovative things around both AI and sport. She's a very, very committed mover and shaker, living currently in Barcelona, working with FC Barcelona. Lucy Mills, welcome.
Thank you so much for having me on.
I'm so pleased you could make time. Your schedule is completely crazy. And I'm so proud that, we're able to host someone like you. I think the young sportswomen of the world can benefit so much from listening to you. Lucy, welcome into the Optimisation Hub and into the Daily Dose podcast. I really would love you to tell everybody about some of your history and what brought you to FC Barcelona.
Yeah, great. Thank you so much. So my journey, I've always worked in football or soccer. So I'm 40 years old now.
Oh my goodness, you're not 40 years old. Okay, I need some of what you've got.
I think it's a lifetime in football. But yeah, so I guess I have been working in and around the game now for 20 years, which is crazy. I've held many roles in the sport, as a player and a coach educator, project manager. I was working on the 2010 FIFA Men's World Cup on the social legacy, based out of South Africa. I then worked as head of women's football in the early professionalization of football in Scandinavia. And then the dream opportunity to move to FC Barcelona in 2018, which is where I am today. So yeah, I've been in and around football for a long time, different roles, and lots of different countries as well. Mostly working in women's football and in using football for social change and social outcomes.
Everything you said is like ding, 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 ding. So every passion area you could possibly even mention. I've just got to ask you before we take another step further. Players you most respect that have been born out of that FC Barcelona environment, who would they be?
So the FC Barcelona team, that also comprises a lot of the Spanish national women's team now, and they have been big activists in the past year or two, with everything that happened with the Spanish Federation and with advocating for employment rights and employment laws. But some of my favorite players, so the Catalans who have come through La Masia, through to the foreigners like Caroline Graham Hansen, who's actually my favorite player, and then Lucy Bronze, who is sorely missed. It's just I think when you're at Barcelona, so I don't work there anymore. I left 3 years ago to set up my own company, but still very much a fan, still very much part of the Barca family. And when you're working there, it's not really until you're there that you actually feel the Barca magic, the Barca values. And then you start to see it on the field and off the field, and the interactions with the players and the staff and everybody. So, it's a really special club, special time. And my role was actually, I was working on behalf of the club and closely linked with the foundation as well. So managing international programs and international relations. So representing the club overseas and seeing people fanatic about Barca in many different countries, and using that magic and the Barca methodologies to deliver programs and campaigns and efforts to make more young people be part of sports and physical activity and so on.
I'm just absolutely, I think the beautiful thing about, I'm Maltese Italian, I just love those environments. And I think when you walk around FIFA and you get that absolute magic, the FIFA museum even, and the magic, and you can almost feel, when you feel the heartbeat, the Women's World Cup, the raw, what actually happened, and the music. And I think what comes with these Latin teams, and you feel it yourself in that environment, is just the passion and the music and the people and the vibrancy. So day-to-day life for you must have been a huge change when you went there and you just were just engulfed by this. What was that like for you?
Yes. So I'm originally from the UK. I've lived in South Africa for many years, and then I lived in Denmark. So yeah, the Spanish culture was new to me 7 years ago. So I remember having an induction, a training, which was you went around the Barca Museum, and then I enrolled in Catalan lessons because Catalan is actually the language of the club and the region, and started to learn more about the lifestyle and the 10 p.m. dinners and the hugging at meetings and all of these cultural differences. But yeah, I think some of my favorite memories are actually looking at the growth of the women's team and seeing how, like when I first joined the club in 2018, the women were newly professional and playing in a small youth B team type stadium. It wasn't really advertised. I would finish work and be like, oh, wow, the women are playing at 6. Nip across the road, just walk in, sit on the bench and just watch with no ticket or anything like that. And seeing how a mix of things, like culturally, I think Catalonia is a region that's really open and liberal and celebrates equality and inclusion, mixed with the club's efforts on unlocking the women's team across the different departments, through to the fan base who are fanatics about Barca, and they're socios. It's a fan governed club. So I think a lot of mix of things and mix of ingredients meant that over time, more and more traction, more and more visibility, more and more opportunity for fans to watch the game, accumulating in, for example, 90 something thousand people filling Camp Nou watching the women's game a couple of years ago, or at the Champions League women's final in Bilbao last year, there was like 50,000 Catalans driving from Barcelona to Bilbao, and just the honking the horns and just like the fan part, the atmosphere and the party. And this is really all walks of life. This is I feel very privileged to call Barcelona and Catalonia home, and to have those experiences that shape me.
I think it's just wonderful. And I've taken you on a little bit of a journey there of indulgence, because one of the things I was going to talk about today with you is that mental physical preparation, and, what it is. You've gone and you've innovated something really incredible. You've obviously been touched by so many different cultures. You've got such an incredible background. I'm fascinated by the history that you've had working both in men's and women's football. What are the differences that you noticed, and what's driven you currently to start what you've started?
So working in an organization, federation, club, and working within teams, whether small or big teams, through to following my gut and doing something that I've never done before, which is this entrepreneurial journey. And at the time, so I was still working at Barcelona, and but I had this thing inside me. It was like this niggling thing, that it was this energy that was taking me into a different place, and a curiosity that I sort of was semi-following, but with a bit of fear and kind of holding myself back. But then ultimately, at the end of the football season and thinking about the following season, I didn't have the same. Okay, because once you start the season, you're in for the season, and there was something shifted in me, which was intuitively, I feel like I need to do this. I need to leave, which is crazy. People are like, how can you even think about leaving Barca? And then kind of go off into that unknown. I must say though, I had and I still have a mentor, well, a friend, a mentor, and then a bunch of really incredible, supportive people around me, not dissimilar to the team environment in that you have in sports. So with that support, then I did the crazy thing and jumped into setting up a company. It was scary.
Can you tell us all about this amazing company that you built? Because I think it's really worth giving some airtime to it. If you can, give us a little bit of a sort of a mental tour around what you've created, because I can hear, even just listening to you, that you're passionate, because you get that little bit of like taking a breath, that sense of, oh, look what I've just done. And you can almost see, as you're mentally going back into that space, what it took to sort of say, I'm going to leave something. People are going to think I'm nuts leaving this, but I've got to go do something. And, that's a true connection to something that you're living as a cause, that you're living and breathing it. And you can see it when you say it, the passion that's there. Tell us about your passion. Tell us about what you've built. Introduce us.
Yeah, so Ready is Ready Sport Global. It's a company registered in Spain. And the early days are the name Ready came from getting women's sport or sport ready for the future. And so the origins of Ready, so back, it actually stems almost 10 years ago when I was working at a professional football club in Denmark, and a couple of friends, one's the head of recruitment, the other one, the commercial guy. They were involved in and talking about cryptocurrencies and Bitcoin, Ethereum, Ripple, Solana, and I could have gotten into this conversation one day, and I was like, "What the heck are you talking about?" And then they exposed me to this entire world of Web3, and I just was stunned. I was like, "How is this entire financial, cultural, social system existing?" And I didn't even know anything about it. And I got really curious about it. And so started learning more, nerding out, going to events, learning more about technologies, about blockchain technology, and being really excited by these different entrepreneurs and programmers and just different types of people that I didn't really interact with in football. It was very separate to football. And there was a particular part of the Web3 space which was about using blockchains for good. So using blockchains to rethink the status quo, or to challenge outdated institutions, or to think about alternative governance, or financial inclusion, these different social issues. And I have a academic background in international development, international relations. So I was drawn to this world, but it was still quite separate to my actual job and focus and work and so on. And then when I was at Barca, there was about 5 years ago, there was a bit of a hype and interest and rise of thinking about blockchain and metaverse and NFTs, and then kind of thought, wow, this is interesting, this intersection now. And so I got more and more engaged in sports technology and this intersection of Web3 and sports, and sharing a lot and ideating and learning about different projects. And then thinking, wow, there holds a lot of premise for women's sport, because the regenerative part of Web3 is really similar to the kind of sidestepping challenges and innovative dynamics and so on in women's sport. So I thought there's something here, quite optimistic about the the rapid changing technological landscape, but then got quite disillusioned, because then I was going into sports tech spaces, going into Web3 sports spaces, and realizing, wow, okay, there's really no women. Women's sport is nowhere to be seen. And thought, wow, if this is really about a permissionless internet, this is about shaping the role of technology in our society, and women are not even, there are not many women in the picture here. So I thought, okay, maybe I can do something. And it was really organic, like not really planned. It was like, okay, I'm gonna write a course which was about everything I knew. And I'd never written a course before, and I'd never done anything like this before. But I thought, maybe I can just sit and write what my understanding is of this space, this technology, the different concepts, and demystify, and how we're seeing this in sport, and what the potential is for women's sport, and then share with a bunch of contacts, friends, teammates, colleagues, former colleagues, for free across my network in women's sport. And people received it and took it and watched it and commented, and it's like, oh wow, this is really interesting. What's all this about? And that was really the start of Ready, because the course was actually Ready, getting women's sport ready for the future. And that was the start. So that was a few years ago, and then kind of gained some interest and traction, like, oh wow, can you come and do a talk about this, or can you run a workshop? Actually, we're getting together at this event, can you do something at this event? And so that's kind of the origins of Ready. And then I guess fast forward today, we still hold strong on the belief that we can use technology in ways that serve people. And within the sporting context, that means that we're looking at how we can use technology to improve our organizations and our work, but also to make sure that people are included, and there's a human element to the use of technology. So today we're an innovation consultancy with a focus on strategy, training. We still do a lot of education and implementation on technologies, blockchain, AI, in sport, with this commitment to social impact in women's sport.
Just loving everything that you said, and that innovation, the focus. I think there's a lot of mental and physical preparation that's needed in sport. And I think that sport's a bedrock, or a place that we can learn so much more about the way that neurologically we're interconnected, and we listen to ourselves, listening to your intuition. And what I'm listening to you say, and again, just hearing that passion, that weight of passion inside of you. And, it's permeable, because you're taking those pauses. You're saying, I love this. It's something that you're doing that's really important. You've really listened to yourself. That intersect between sport, technology, and transition, super important. The transition, and you've mentioned equity as a throwaway statement a couple of times. Gainful employment is obviously very important for people both within sport and also those who are leaving or transitioning out of sport. That mental physical preparation plays a part in anything we do, and obviously training and development is important. How important do you think it is, and where do you see your role, that you've carried that mental and physical preparation from sport into Ready?
So I think there's, so with technology and particularly AI and blockchain, like emerging technologies, women's sport is already really innovative, right? So there are lots of characteristics that make it so, because of the suffering and the fight and the hustle, and we have a fan base that's super digitally savvy. So technology is part of how the sport grew. We have already thinking about wrestling with institutions that didn't serve women's sport. We've had to be resourceful about how to fundraise and how to support the growth of the sport. We've had people doing 5 people's jobs, certainly my case. You're not just the commercial manager, but you're the commercial manager, social manager, marketing manager, partnership manager, relationship. So I think there is that innate innovation mindset and openness within women's sports and women's sports organizations. Of course, in men's sport too. It's of course, there, men's sport typically in the higher end has had the luxury to invest more in technological innovations and so on. I think where we've seen a lot of success and traction is that often AI and technology and these types of topics, they're not kind of friendly. They don't speak to women's sport. It's so male dominated. It's so and you can see that in the evidence, the data, and the statistics around investment, around so on. But I think where we've been able to create those spaces, demystify concepts, make these technologies relevant to our own daily lives and our work, whether you're an athlete or a professional working. And so that educational training aspect is really, really important. And so we've focused a lot on education, on training, on translating this tech bro type vibe to a space that actually is really innovative and just gets it. So that's been like a big part of our work is our intentional focus on working with different groups, using examples and case studies as to how this can supercharge or reduce time or cost or reduce, from reducing online hate to being able to articulate your optimal sponsorship returns, or translate across borders. Like lots of really, really great examples that are so relevant and needed in sport today. So I think the mental training part for me as a professional is that technology is moving so fast, and we are also as a company trying to stay ahead and see the connection between what's happening on a macro level and outside of the sports sector, and then also working with organizations that are also just busy doing incredible work, and so just trying to make that.
It's like connection. Almost living inside a big. I mean, I always think now we have the world as an incubator. There seems to be so much speed, and AI is just speeding everything else up. I think we started to chat before we got into the room that AI is just like part of life now. So it's that extension. if you look at the business of sport and you look at, how it's wrapped around building our communities, how important do you think sport is to community and sport is to business?
Well, I always say that like sport is about people, and the sport is all about an emotional connection. And I think sometimes business and sometimes technology forgets that. So I think business is most successful, and technology is most successful when you put the human and the human emotion at the core, at the center of the work. I think the challenge or the opportunity that we have now, of course, is that if you're a top end, like a Barca, and with global fan bases and lots of sports properties have these global fan bases, how do you speak to those global audiences and also serve your immediate local community and fan base as well? So there's like a global local thing happening there, and there's organizations that have cracked that and using technologies to drive that and support that and have the digital infrastructure to do that. And then there's other examples where technology is being used, or there's a latest something that is criticized to be over commercializing fans or alienating fans. So I think if we just remember what, as sports organizations, what our community strategy and what our what is it, what do we do, then we can find the technology, or we can find the digital infrastructure to support that. And that's the opportunity that we have, and particularly with AI now. But it has to be joined up. It has to be coherent. It can't be excited person over there wanting to do something in the metaverse and then the local community. It's like has to be more aligned, and ultimately, it goes back to the human experience of sport, whether you're well, I guess most of us are fans to that in that experience.
I love what you touched on because it's quite human. It's kind of, you've touched on how important and how much the passion of sport when you went to Barcelona kind of really engulfed you, even though you'd had those really interesting tapestries in your career. You've taken that passion and humanified something that's technology based and spoken about it so eloquently, and so much about, this is the balance. This is what drove me to it. You've touched on intuition, which is incredibly important to serve that. You've touched on communication. You've touched on the interpersonal sensitivity that's necessary to be able to build and innovate. These are all skills that are not just acquired. They don't just exist. So obviously the training ground is working in teams and building cultures. And I'd say that that's probably the one thing. I mean, I often will say that culture will eat strategy for breakfast. So you've got to build a strong culture. And equally, you've got to be able to be quite tough about getting rid of the odd thing that happens, or the person or people that might come into a culture that distract it, because, or they might bend it out of shape. Because if you've got a good culture, you've got to either preserve it, and if it's not getting preserved. So what have you learned about building people and teams? Because here's your career spanning the work that you did in the UK, the things that you've done, in South Africa, and obviously very different cultures, but you're developing, designing, and working on both a sports culture and a business culture. What have you learned? What helps?
So on the culture piece, I'm very inspired by he's a teammate. He's an advisor to Reddy and Dr. Jacob Nash, and he has his company Minded, which really speaks to the importance of understanding and promoting culture in today's world. And I mention him because, firstly, as a reference, and I'm always learning from him, but also in our work, I realized that, so at Ready, we doing courses and trainings, and we've done AI and blockchain trainings with over 3,000 sports industry professionals in the last couple of years, and we were doing a lot of skills, training. But also, I came to a realization that if this isn't supported at the top, that if there's not an openness to change, to supporting teammates, so really leadership and in that umbrella of that kind of environment, then it is quite limited, because we were seeing, and this has happened in my own life and world, is you can get really, really into, I'm using AI in my work for my comms, for my this, for my that, but then, I'm actually not allowed to. Is there a policy or not? I don't know. Or, and actually that person's doing the same thing, but then that's duplicated. So it's not really joined up. So we've done training, but then Jacob is coming in saying culture change. And that I think is a big takeaway. And then if I think actually throughout my entire career, that's also been the case. So where we've had some of my best experiences in football are because of the captain, or because of the boss, or that setting that tone. So I think that is a kind of shout out for us and for people in leadership positions, is that you have I have a guy in my team who's 15 years younger than me, and he's deep in the weeds of AI, sport, sustainability. And so like he's off doing all kinds of incredible stuff. It's like, I need to recognize that and provide that kind of environment where he can explore that and not limit that. So I think that's maybe one immediate reflection. And something we're also grappling with is like, okay, we get asked to do a training on AI by European Sports Federation because AI is the topic and we all know we need to do it. But what is and there's a lot more that goes with an AI training. It's there's the ethics, the governance, the strategy, the coherency, the implementation, and all of that.
I think it's fascinating because that branding of business, that branding of people, the identity, the social identity, the characteristics, it all comes back to culture. It's the culture that you carry, the culture that you exude. It's the culture you become part of. It's what you grow in, culture of family. And sometimes there's the great divide. There's a bit of a dichotomy. We can see, this even graphically in the geopolitical situations around the world. You've had such unique experiences, though, and I feel like, there's so much more that we could delve into. But if I bring us to a little bit of a close around life beyond sport, which you went to yourself, you gutsed it, and you said, right, I'm going to go here because I see something else as an option and a possibility for me. What would you say to people who, perhaps are prone to questioning themselves? And I think this is probably something we need to think about also for our young people in sport, because anxiety is rife. You've got 73% of young women in the Australasia, the APAC region, are also affected when they're coming out of sport. So we're still not quite getting it right. What advice would you give to people who were in that overthinking, over-assessing, not making decisions kind of space, whether they're young athletes in sport or they're women who are looking to transition, or they're people who have transitioned and still haven't found their way? What advice would you give them?
I think if you're if you're an athlete, or actually if you're anybody, you can think about, and you're interested in, and you're passionate about sport. First of all, you can look at the entire sports industry, and you can really apply almost every skill, profession, job to the industry, because sport it permeates the economy, the culture, society. And so if you're an athlete, you might think, oh, my playing days are coming to an end, I'll be a coach. But it's not like that anymore. You can be an entrepreneur, you can be a researcher, you can be an analyst. So lots of different skill sets. And also, I think from the other side, if you're not in sport, the sports industry needs you, because we need outside perspectives. We need.
I'm loving that. We need you. Come on, get involved.
Yeah, and because sometimes we in sport we get a bit brainwashed, or we think that sport is just the solution for everything, and we don't know anything else. Whereas if you're coming with a business background, or you've been working on culture change, or on marketing and activation, really any I would struggle to think of a role that wouldn't be applicable in this sports, entertainment, gaming space.
Massive ecosystem there. What, and you touched on again, looking at things and believing that you can't, but maybe you can. How do you tackle your imposter syndrome? How would you advise our listeners to tackle theirs?
Yeah, I'd say find and follow people who you kind of intrigued by, curious about. The incredible thing now is like LinkedIn, and in today's world, like a 21-year-old can just write to one of their professional idols, and that's amazing. Like when we 20 years ago, we really couldn't do that. It was kind of much more limited to our physical where we were, right? So we then had to move and to knock on doors and hustle. Whereas I think today's, you can, if you're young and you are thinking about your virtual network, and you're also thinking about how to demonstrate and display your work in a digital format, in a creative way, you can catch attention. And also there's way more open source opportunities now. So even conferences and events, and there's even this podcast, there's things that are available for learning, for inspiration, for growing, for connection. And I think also, like, I mean, I'm literally learning every day, and in that learning, sometimes I also don't, I'm confused or frustrated or don't know what's happening, and I don't think that ever changes at any age. But it's a sign that you're growing.
It's a sign. It is, and I think you've, as you've highlighted, it's interesting because you've come out of a very regimented and probably fulsome environment where everyone's kind of doing the same sort of thing if you're in sport, to innovating on the outside still, to bringing that culture with everything you do, and also a few pearls of wisdom that maybe you have to do something else, but you can still be involved in sport. So if I were to summate today up, I mean, I've just heard threads of passion, purpose, delivery, the odd kind of, sense of frustration. But I can hear also that you're not done yet. You've got so much more you want to do. You can hear it oozing from you. So I'd probably say to you, like, to wind down on this podcast, obviously, I don't think we could do you justice in that short amount of time, but I think one of the things I'd love you to be able to share with the audience is what about some of the things you've done would be great lessons for them. What are your top 3 things that you've done that you think, not so much a story to it, but something that you think, wow, if I could just tell people all about this, it would change their lives?
Yeah, I think firstly, follow that niggle, that intuition. It's something. Follow it. You might not know what it is, but it will lead you somewhere for sure, and that's definitely my case. Secondly, I've had just incredible opportunities through sport, and many of my memories, and I don't think I've even talked about a game. I love the game, but the memories that stay with me are the people I've met, the places I've been. And so if you have that opportunity to get involved in an event, or I don't know, volunteer at a marathon, or move overseas for a job, or whatever it is, like those experiences in and through sport are very enriching. And then, thirdly, if I look back, I think it's just this feeling of constant learning. So particularly now in such change that we're living in, learning can be free, actually, and you don't have to pay thousands and thousands for courses and degrees and so on. There's so much learning and availability online now that you can really craft your own learning journey. Then it's just a matter of time management and self motivation. But yeah, those are my 3 things.
Okay, so those are the 3 top things. It's to listen to your gut, to manage yourself really well, and to make sure that you jump in and you innovate, because there's plenty of room, obviously, for that innovation out there. And what I want to give a plug to is women, particularly who are in sport, thinking about gainful employment, getting out of the sort of the sense of what next. You can have it all. You can have the family, have the sport, have everything going for you. There are moments, though, when it's tough, right? So we have to go fall on our swords and say, let's pick up and get going. For something out of interest and a pinch of interest, what's your get going? Is it music? Is it a book? What gets you going when you're stuck in a rut?
What gets me going is getting outside, fresh air, sunshine. Like this morning, I know that today I've got about 7 or 8 hours of online calls, meeting sessions, and so on. So I thought, I need to dedicate an hour of my day to really wake up. And then, secondly, I think also not taking yourself too seriously. So finding the people who you just giggle with and have fun with, just doing silly things. And they're really just simple stuff, right? It's like getting outside, fresh air, doing silly things and laughing. They're the things that can help to balance.
Well, I'm loving that piece of wisdom around the getting back to balance. And you throw away, you've got sports there. It's always there, and it's around everything that you do. You're super amazing. I think, you definitely need a cape to be running around with. And there's lots of really cool things that you've done. I loved listening to you today because it's just that genuine. You can feel that everything that you've said is really close to your heart because you gave it so much of yourself. I think what I'd want to say to you is just a very, very warm thank you, because I think, you and a couple of others that I've managed to speak with have just kept it so real. So keep on keeping it real. We need people like you in sport. Keep on taking the plunge on intuition. And I hope that we get to form a bit, of a great connection into your journey, because I think it's inspirational. So thank you so much for spending time today. And I super look forward to getting some of that footage back and being able to share it with you.
Amazing. And thank you so much for your time and for giving me the space and for connecting me with your